Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unconventional GMs, the channel where we play actual plays, ttrpgs, in about 2 hours or less with Vim and Figure. I'm Gaz, one of your hosts, and I also host the What Would the Smart Party Do UK role-playing podcast. But I'm relieved of all duties this time, apart from play, because we've got a guest to run a game for us, Monster of the Week. So let me introduce Alex White. Alex, do you want to tell us what it is we're playing and why everybody should be so excited?
Hello, everybody. My name is Alex. I've been on the channel a few times as a player, but I'm phenomenally excited to be playing here in the GM chair today, and I'm going to be running Monster of the Week, a Powered by the Apocalypse game of ordinary or mostly ordinary people hunting down beasts and monsters of the night. Think Buffy, sort of set in our real world. We've got a bit of a setting variation for you here. Instead of being set in the modern world that we're all familiar with, we are inspired by Shadows Over Filmland for Trail of Cthulhu by Ken Hite and Robin Laws, which takes as its setting the sort of classic universal horror films of the 30s and 40s. So think, of course, black and white monochrome, think towering castles, dark, forbidding forests. Think a strange sort of ersatz Europe where it's not clear whether everyone is perhaps German or Austrian or French or British. This is very much a strange film setting. The book contains a lot of great advice for creating your own adventures, and also a lot of great pre-published scenarios as well. We are playing Dr. Gravenhurst by Robin Laws, which kind of served as the inspiration for the adventure, but I've kind of remixed it to suit Monster of the Week, so it's perhaps no longer recognizable, but that's very much the inspiration. So we're going to go around, we're going to let people introduce themselves and who they're playing, and then we will crack on. He's spoken already, so we'll start with him. Let's meet Gaz. Hello, Gaz.
Hello. And I will not be regaling everybody with my Dutch accent, but you'll just have to imagine when at home, because I am Professor Edwin van Hoorn, a storied and well-renowned professor who, unfortunately, has brushed up against the supernatural in finding someone exsanguinated, and through his studies and experiences has found that, in fact, vampires exist, or at least one, Count Dracula. Since then, Van Hoorn has dedicated himself to the pursuit of this foul darkness and any other blood-sucking or other creatures that may exist. So he uses the power of science, his mind, books, and modern technology to defeat these ancient evils.
Very nice. Guy, who are you and who are you playing?
Hi, yes, I'm Guy. I'm the other half of Unconventional GMs, and I also blog at Burn After Running, where there's quite a bit of Powered by the Apocalypse advice, including a post on how to be a good PBTA player. So feel free to open that in your browser and follow along and see how I follow my own advice or not during this session. I'm playing Constance Talbot. I grew up in the Welsh countryside. At the age of 18, her family curse came to light, and she discovered that she suffered from lycanthropy. She was a werewolf. So after having some dark times where some people may have been killed, she decided to secrete herself away and live in isolation until recently, when the attentions of the professor and his compatriots led her to believe that maybe she could seek some redemption and fight monsters herself using her own particular lycanthropic powers. So quite an odd-looking woman who hasn't got much in the way of social graces, has lived on her own for some time, wearing quite archaic clothes from when she first went into hiding. That's me.
Very nice. And Shane, who are you and who are you playing today?
I am, as advertised, Shane, sometimes player here on Unconventional GMs, and happy to be back again. I am playing Florence Chambers. Florence spent her formative years in luxury and comfort, born rich, fell in love with the father's protege, was en route for a fairy tale life of comfort and privilege until her wedding night, when her husband Ernst's best friend, Henry, a brilliant scientist, well, he managed to animate a corpse or reanimate a corpse. Some forbidden experiment gone wrong. It broke into the house, killed her father, killed Ernst, and took an eye from Florence. She managed to defeat it through some hitherto unknown strength, and that changed the direction of her life. And she now travels around Europe with this intrepid band of monster hunters, attempting to put more reanimated corpses down, well aware that somebody in the band knows a dark secret she doesn't want shared.
Lovely stuff. And finally, last but not least, Jag, who are you and what are you playing?
Hello, I am Jag, an unconventional player for the Unconventional GMs. Tonight I am playing Manfred Jackson. He is an academic of some persuasion, interested in the magical arts and what goes on in ways that people might otherwise manipulate nature and so on. He's interested in how this kind of stuff can make him a more successful person, really. He's manipulative in this way, but he's also just doesn't have the chops to carry it out. He is put upon, he is downtrodden, he is generally the butt of it all, but lurking beneath is this ambition to be more than what he can be, and he feels that hexways are the right ways to flare his ambition.
Very nice. All right. And with that, we'll jump in. So our intrepid monster hunters were called to the small town of Weisselberg, where an overwhelmed mayor and police sheriff were at a loss of what to do about a string of grave robberies that have been plaguing the little village. They didn't know who was doing them and they didn't know what to do about it, but fortunately they were able to get hold of our intrepid band, who swooped in to investigate. Upon arrival in Weisselberg, you found that Charles Gravenhurst, the son of a local doctor and member of the landed gentry, had also disappeared. One of you has a connection to Charles, this young society man. Which of you wants to jump in and establish that connection?
That seems relatively on point for Florence, the society girl.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we moved around in society circles together, and there was even a discussion perhaps of him courting me, but my father turned him away because his family was just not successful enough.
Very nice. All
However,
right.
I always had a little bit of a soft spot for his cheeky smile and sense of fun.
Lovely stuff. All right. So, as is the want of unconventional GMs, we're going to skip forward. So we're not going to play out that investigation from the jump with our characters moving around Weisselberg, looking into every last lead. We're going to skip forward a bit. And indeed, after some investigation, you found that Dr. Frederic Gravenhurst himself was the perpetrator of these foul grave robberies, and perhaps even more appallingly responsible for the disappearance of his own son. In order to establish some characters and jump through that investigation, we're going to go around and each of you are going to tell me what you found, what you contributed to the investigation, and how that progressed, and how that eventually led to unmasking the not so good doctor as the perpetrator. And our action will open as you go to his castle to confront him. So I will pick myself, I think. Professor Van Horn, how did you start the investigation? What promising lead did you find? And a chance for you to show off what Professor Van Horn's all about as well.
Yeah, I'm going to actually roll one of my moves now, because at the start of the mystery, I get to roll plus sharp because I'm the one with the plan. So I probably had the initial idea of what was going on. So I'll see how that goes, and then I'll determine what I actually contributed or failed to, if that's all right. So let's just roll that. A very good success. So I get +2 hold to use in future, which will be handy in this steel castle. But yes, I unpicked the tangled web of the European marriages, relationships, and so forth, and found the doubts about whether Charles was actually his son, the other father that might be on the scene, the baker that was actually the bastard son of one of the nobility, and basically produced for my team a tangled web with a literal tree drawn of the family tree with little shields hanging off it. And there's a fast forward through my investigation as we're one by one chatting to people and putting a red pen through each of the shields until eventually we've narrowed down to who we think it might be in the core group of people.
Very nice. just continue on my screen. Guy, what did Constance contribute to the investigation? How did you move things along?
Well, as these, I think concurrently with the talking to all these family members, Constance slipped off in the night and in wolf form began sniffing around the graveyard, literally trying to pick up and follow the leads. And I think we see a moment of maybe Professor Van Horn talking to an erstwhile villager who we're not sure is connected to the investigation, and then the appearance of he catches the eye of a large black wolf following a trail in the background, who just nods and confirms that this person has been in the graveyard recently before skulking off as the man turns at their sort of panting breathing before he sees me.
Very nice. Florence, Shane, what did you deduce and add to the investigation?
So remembering a few years earlier, prior to the courtship being ended, walking down we see sort of a flashback memory of Florence looking different, without the eye patch, without the serious expression, walking down a riverside with the young doctor's son. And he says it reminds him of the place he used to walk and play as a child near his house. And he mentioned an offhand comment that at the time Florence thought nothing of the hiding place where his journal was stashed. And she remembered that. And leading, during the investigation, it led her down to that hiding place. And there was his journal still there, still used all these years, in which we discovered his concerns about his father coming in at night with muddy shoes and a broken shovel and things like that.
Absolutely lovely. Excellent. And finally, Jag, Manfred, how did Manfred finally nail that Dr. Frederic was the one that you were after?
Well, it was a complete accident. He was obviously on our shortlist of core group of people who might be involved, simply because he was related to the young Charles. It was at a university affair where Manfred was fraternizing with some of his old colleagues and so on, and he brushed past the doctor in the corridor. It was a clumsy encounter, but there was something that fell out of his pocket, and as he grabbed that, only noticing some time later, he got a sensation that this is the same kind of feel that we felt when we originally investigated around the town to get a sense of what Charles had been doing, where he'd been lurking, where he'd been going, and there was an unholy symmetry about what kind of feeling Manfred got, which was stronger than anything else from any of the other core group of suspects we'd investigated.
Perfect. Okay, so with that narrowed down, the next question, which will allow us to jump into action, is what our investigators did about it once they learned. So, are you going to produce yourselves at the doctor's castle and confront him directly, person to person, or are we going to see you sneaking into the castle, perhaps to rescue Charles and do some covert investigation? I suggest we quickly reach a consensus and we'll jump in.
I'm smiling, and so is my fellow unconventional GM, because I think we've got a mind meld working here where we're thinking we might split up. I don't know whether that's what you had in mind or whether it's
yeah, why not both? Why not both?
If that makes it more difficult for you, Alex.
No, you are welcome to do both. You just need to tell me who is doing what, and we will cut between as we go.
The professor's definitely more of a go up and speak to people kind of man than anything else, whereas he suspects the werewolf might be more of a not speaking and more rending kind of approach to things.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's how we pair up. I think maybe I wonder if I don't know which works better, if Florence comes with me or if Manfred comes with me. If Florence comes with me, maybe to sneak in and try and get to Charles, while
Yeah.
you two do the talking. Maybe Manfred's magic will come in handy.
Yeah,
Manfred's attitude and pose is very much quite. He's very amiable. He understands the academic world in many ways. He's going to be fairly comfortable with fading into the background of of the lecture halls and that kind. He will be able to turn it on if it needs to happen, which hopefully things won't escalate in that way, because all of these things can be worked out by a little conversation, a bit of a seminar, something like that.
You could just see the crestfallen look on the professor's face as the nice young ladies go off, and he's left with a weird magician again, talking about how things can be sorted in special ways. It's like, oh, please don't let this be like Vienna, Manfred. I can't face that again.
Well, I mean, actually, it's very, very good that we've been able to spend a bit of time on this way, and he enters into a conversation with you that is absolutely nothing to do with this, but an old research topic that he had of interest. And as we're working our way towards our final destination, you've basically zoned out as he's bored you with a whole bunch of theoretical topics of magic and other things, and suddenly we find ourselves at the door.
Indeed, you do. And yes, you presented yourselves when and earlier in the investigation and got to speak to Frederic, so you know that a rapt knock on the front door is of course how you produce yourselves. And as you do that, as that knock resounds, we cut to our other investigators. How have the two of you snuck into the castle?
I hope you have
Constance and
Wellington
Florence.
boots, Florence. There will be mud on your shoes and your fine feet. I'd hate to mess them up. Because we're, I think we're going through. There's maybe an old storm drain that goes underneath. That Constance has sniffed out, and we are plodding through, ignoring any other clearer routes in that we might be able to sneak in.
Yeah, absolutely. Water erosion has cut this sort of womb-like tunnel from the soft sedimentary rock around it. Its smooth surfaces are sort of dripping and glistening with lime-rich water, and it becomes quite constricted at points, but it's just about large enough for the two of you to squeeze your way through. And so for a long time, as you're going down this passage, the loudest sound is kind of dripping water that echoes through this cavern. But as you turn a corner, you see in kind of low light ahead of you, there's some kind of candle light coming from way off down the passage, suggesting that you've picked the right place and you are going to make your way into the castle. But you can see a kind of hunching, stooped figure kind of doing something silhouetted in that light, throwing a large shadow behind them, shuffling around, looking for something, perhaps moving things around. There's a scraping on a stone floor, and you hear the kind of mumbling of several other figures possibly behind them. We'll cut back to our other hunters, Manfred and the professor, who have knocked on this door. And after a pause, Reinhold, who you know to be the butler of this place, opens these doors with a kind of a loud creaking sound. And he's an older man. He's got kind of pushed back graying hair and finery that perhaps has seen better days. He's got a bit of a hunch. And he says, Professor and Herr Manfred, we weren't expecting you again so soon after your recent visit.
What a delight, then, that we were able to extend our stay. Is the master of the house at home? We have some pointed questions and perhaps some revelations for him that he will find quite acute, I can assure you.
The Reinhold kind of glances behind him, almost as if he's looking for the doctor. Impossible in a house this large that he would be so nearby. But he's looking around somewhat furtively, and he says, "Well, yes, of course. I believe that when you visited before, you had your two companions, those lovely young ladies. Have they left for warmer climates?"
You seem overly concerned with gentlewomen of good breeding. You, sir, should not be concerning yourself with ladies and stick to tavern wenches or whatever it is you do. And I'll look down my nose at him disgustedly. Mind your manners before I get my man here to thrash you. And I'll look doubtfully at Manfred.
Manfred doesn't register that he's being looked down upon there. He puts an arm around Reinhold, saying, "It's okay. They're perfectly fine. They're just sorting out what we're going to do after we've been here. We're probably going to join up with them for some canapes or something like that. But we thought we'd drop in and find out what how things are with the doctor. I'm sure he must be very concerned about the missing appearance, the disappearance even of his son. But I have to say, you're a very good butler. I've noticed this on my previous occasions to arrive here, and if you ever should need another employee, then I'd be happy to consider your position here. I'm not in a state to be able to do that just yet, but you know, obviously, we're heading that way, and always looking for a good man to manage the house.
Before
Professor.
Manfred started speaking, Reinhold was sort of turning a look upon him as if to say, "How do you put up with this guy?" about Professor Van Horn. But now he kind of half-heartedly turns that same look back towards the professor, and then kind of gives up and says, "Of course, gentlemen, possible employment opportunities, they can be discussed with our master as well. I believe he's here somewhere. I'll show you through to the Great Hall. Please follow me." And he shows you through a familiar route through kind of twisting corridors with faded tapestries and long dead ancestors glowering down at everybody. Back in the catacombs with Constance and Florence. So light level here, like I said, not good. There's this kind of hunched, shuffling figure ahead who looks like they're kind of ankle deep in water, and then possibly some other figures kind of lurking around, although you can't really see them. What do you do? What's the plan? This person is almost certainly supposed to be here, and so probably doesn't want you breaking in.
Shuffling as in like a person, or shuffling like, say, a corpse?
Very hard to tell. It could conceivably be a person who's kind of tired, perhaps injured, you know, kind of pulling them and dragging themselves around, but there's certainly not a lot of vitality from what you can tell.
I think what I'm going to do is just sniff the air and sort of shuffle forward and try and crane my eyes into the light, and maybe try and read a bad situation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because this sounds like one. So I'll roll plus whatever it is. This should do it. I think sharp. Ooh, yes, just make success. So I think I'd spend hold to ask you questions.
Yeah, and there's a question list that, yeah, if you need it, I can provide it. But
I think the question the obvious one is, I guess if we can pass it like this, is what's my best way in? Sort of, if that can be like past them.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're operating in quite a confined space. I think it is dark, but not dark enough, I would say, for stealth to necessarily be the best approach. So probably the best way in this situation is to kind of overwhelm whatever force is standing between you and into the rest of the castle, and then dealing with the consequences later. A sneaky approach will probably waste time and is also risky. So the best way out is through, I think.
I will sort of pantomime mime that to Florence with like.
Yeah. So I will I'll initially slowly move forward into a position where I can strike, and I've got brass knuckles on one hand and the other is hovering near my trusty signature fighting knife in case this does turn out to be one of the living dead. And then when I get close enough, I am just going to go in with overwhelming force.
We'll probably cut back to the force itself, or I will perhaps.
Yep.
You move closer enough to get a better view, and perhaps disappointingly for Florence, you do get a good enough view to see this is in fact a living human person, and not something more horrible. It's the kind of stooped form of Bogdan, who was the kind of grave digger at the local cemetery, who at some point you found out had thrown in leagues with Dr. Frederic. Although it's a little strange that he's down here, but he is kind of a known associate. Very much a living person, but one of you maybe learned the hard way that he's pretty handy with a crowbar, so he's still a bit of a threat.
Yeah. So I will put the second brass knuckle on and just go for him.
Excellent. We'll cut back to that in a second, and we'll make your dice roll then. I think we'll check back in on our companions. So you've been shown through these corridors that you, thankfully, the route you were shown before, so you're pretty sure you are on the way to the Great Hall. This cavernous room is dominated by a pair of boar-headed wooden gargoyles which jut from the twin staircases. Each staircase is twisting and turning through a series of weird angles, and there are shadows of indeterminate origin slashing across the walls, dividing it into a series of disorienting diagonals. You're left waiting, but thankfully not for too long. Reinhold kind of slips away, and then from the top of the staircase you hear a sort of self-confident voice that rings out in the hall, and it says, "Gentlemen, why, I count myself very fortunate to receive another visit." And Dr. Frederic makes his way down the stairs. He's an older man. He's got kind of a withered, gaunt face, close cropped hair. When you met him before, he was wearing actually, pretty modern styles, pretty well kept clothes. But now he's wearing his kind of grubby lab coat over them with God knows what staining it. And he's obviously he's wiping his hands on a rag as he's stepping his way down these stairs. And he says, "To what do I owe the pleasure of this visit?"
Well, the professor's just putting away his English Dutch dictionary because he's been looking up thrashing in case he got the word wrong, but he's pretty sure he got the right word. He just didn't produce the outcome that he wanted from Manfred, so he gives him a bit of a stare and produces a cigarette case to offer Frederic. A cigarette, obviously, but he's got a very shiny silvered mirror on the inside, so he's looking for reflections to check whether Frederick's in fact a vampire, because that's the answer to all the problems always. And he'll be disappointed if there's a reflection in it, but he checks anyway, just to be sure.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, mostly disappointed, for the man does in fact cast a reflection, but there is an odd shimmer in the mirror. Something about his reflection it's not appearing as it should, and you're pretty sure you got the angle right, suggesting that mirrors can reflect all kinds of strange and dark magic. So there might be something else odd at work here.
Oh, is there while I'm giving him some flannel, then is there kind of a reader situation move I can do to kind of?
Yeah. I
can't remember what the exact name for it's called.
In this, it's called read a bad situation. It's the same one that Guy just rolled. There is an investigate a mystery move, but I'm not sure if that's quite appropriate here.
Not initially, I don't think. So I'll just try the read a bad situation. And get advanced success.
So that means you get 3 questions you can ask from the question list.
Okay. So what's the biggest threat? Do you want to know all the questions up front, or do you want to answer them one at a time?
It is entirely up to you how this works. So you can hit me with all 3 of them and I'll answer them all, or you can save them and use them throughout the scene. So keep asking me until you're happy and want to hold on to them.
Okay, yeah. So it's what's the biggest threat? Are there any dangers that we haven't noticed yet? And what's most vulnerable to me?
So I think I might give you back a question, because what's the biggest threat and what haven't you noticed yet are effectively the same thing. There is a wry confidence to the doctor's manner. You think he's probably already begun to suspect that this may not be a social call and there may be something else that's about to happen. But there's a quiet confidence of a man that's got an ace up his sleeve. There's something or someone else in the vicinity that makes him feel very confident about what's going to happen. It's not inherent to him. It's not something he's going to do. There's a way he's looking around, a way he's holding himself that suggests that he's got perhaps an associate who he feels very good about. And that, when it arrives, will be the biggest threat and the biggest danger.
Mm-hmm.
So those are 2 combined together. Is it what's most vulnerable to me?
Yes.
Was the other part of this? Yeah, okay. In this case, still the man himself. The doctor is probably vulnerable to you. Like I said, he's got a misplaced confidence, a hubris even, that means that were you to physically attack him, you could likely gain the upper hand.
Well, if someone was competent and they physically attacked him, they could likely gain the upper hand. Okay. I'll just start to confront him then, unless Manfred wants to jump in at that point. What do you reckon, Jag?
Well, as he's approaching us, and he's obviously clearly taking his his lab coat and things like that off. I'll offer to take his bloody gloves and the rest of it off him and hold it while he becomes a bit better suited to greet some visitors and this kind of stuff. What I'm trying to do here is to gather some associated objects that I can later on use to work out what's going on, to get a sympathetic token, essentially, to either use magic against them or to discern some threat that might be at play. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think this is probably just act under pressure. So you're trying to pocket something useful enough to you. So that's a cool roll.
And yeah, while this is going on, I'll be giving information away to my companion via our coded messages going, there's a red cockerel here this evening, which means there's a hidden enemy somewhere behind the curtains or whatever. So I'll be just saying weird things just to kind of like pass my information.
And Manfred is very bad at understanding, doing multitasking. So while the professor is talking about cockerels and Manfred is trying to say, well, look, let me help you with your gloves and so on, it completely bypasses the doctor, and he dismisses me entirely. That's a devastatingly bad roll, a 4.
Yes, indeed. He says, such trifles are for the servants, man. Please, no need to take any of my things. Reinhold, and he's, summoning Reinhold to take his gloves and his coat and God knows what else. And he says to the both of you, well, it's most fortunate that it is the two of you that have come to visit me, for you're both men of learning, are you not?
Oh, most certainly.
Indeed we are, and it's good that you're throwing yourself into your work, given the worry you must be under at the loss of your son. Perhaps you could show us your experiments or whatever it is that you're about, that we might expand our knowledge and ourselves become distracted from the worry of the village.
Yes. Yes. Well, I wouldn't worry yourself too much about my son. He goes off, he has fancies, he gallivants around the countryside. He'll be back soon. But yes, my experiments, well, it's excellent that you have shown such interest, for I was going to bring it up. Although, gentlemen, you may wish to prepare yourselves, and we'll cut back at that to the catacomb, where I think Florence is about to make the attack.
I believe Florence could get +1 from the read about bad situation move as well.
Yes, absolutely.
You get +1 if you act on the information while it's relevant, which it probably is. So.
And I do think we're going to attacking someone physically is not always kick some ass, but I think we are kicking some ass here. So Florence, unless you have had second thoughts, you should roll the kick some ass move to see what you enact on Bogdan.
I am kicking ass with my with the +1. That is a 9, mixed success.
Okay, so on a mixed success with kick some ass, you and whatever you're fighting inflict harm on each other. Is based on the established dangers of the game. So Bogdan does unfortunately have his handy crowbar. He is going to be able to get a couple of hits in for a total of 2 harm to you, Florence. But you are going to be able to hit him back, and I think you can hit hard enough that you're going to take him out of action, though probably not kill him. Do you want to describe what this looks like, Shane?
Yeah, so basically, Florence moves forward slightly, poised in what looks like a perfect position, but because Florence is missing an eye and has an eye patch, the slight bit of peripheral vision, she doesn't notice the small hanging bit of metal chain from whatever held a grate in place years ago, and she jingles it, which means she loses the element of surprise. And as Bogdan turns, she leaps, and he swings with the crowbar. Because she's already moving, it slams hard into her side, and she kind of goes past him, but manages to hook an arm round the neck and take him down, and then just end up on top of him like it was a cage fight, just smacking him with the brass knuckles until Constance lays a hand on her shoulder.
You say hand. I think it's a paw. I think out of the darkness, this wet black wolf leaps and sort of pads over and stops you. But I think I remain in wolf form then, sniffing the air. and making to cautiously move forwards.
There's a horrible dead smell in the air, and the dead flesh suggests that you are hot on the trail of the corpses that have gone missing. Bogdan is kind of coughing and spluttering. Remember, you're still in this kind of underground sort of waterway, so your fight threw up, splashes and water everywhere. So he's coughing and spluttering and also kind of groaning with pain. And he says, "What are you doing here? Why would you come here?"
Because what you are doing is wrong.
Wrong? Well, it's a strange, cruel world. We all make our own way. Who's to say what's right and wrong? You are not God.
No, but I am the one at the minute that has the power of life and death over you. You don't know what these things can do. That smell, I've smelt it before. It came for me on what should have been the happiest night of my life. It came for me, and it took more than my eye. It took my heart. And now you are messing with those powers you don't understand. And just sort of,
Absolutely. Very nice. Okay. Quick side note, we've introduced a mechanic where each of our players once per session can do a stirring monologue, and when we can see the camera zooming in on their face and really getting their Oscar moment, then they mark an XP, and Shane has been the first to demonstrate that, so just mark an XP, Shane. Thank you very much.
I should claim my Oscar later.
Bogdan lets out a kind of horrible hacking laugh, kind of his perhaps broken rib cage now, and making it difficult for him to get the humor out there. And he says, "The power of life and death, you can't possibly imagine." We cut back upstairs. So the doctor is moving towards the kind of grand entrance doors to the Great Hall, addressing Manfred and the professor, and he says, I take it from your backgrounds that the two of you are most interested in unconventional science, and I do hope you won't be troubled by perhaps a disregard for conventional morality that has been the secret of my success.
Unconventionality is the hallmark of our trade, really. There is no innovation in academic spaces or any other spaces that plays better to taking an unconventional approach, shall we say, to matters. Would you not agree?
Professor begins to worry that he's outnumbered again. He's not sure. And once again, sighs that he doesn't have Florence or Constance. So yes, of course. We should take a closer look at these things, don't we? We are men of robust natures and broad minds. Take us to the heart of your laboratory, and we shall see what you've been up to.
He says, "My lab, well, certainly. But there's something else I must show you first. I believe you should see the results of my work before you see its means. And I'm sure that you will both join me and add your not inconsiderable learning to my cause." And makes his way further towards that door. And we cut back. Bogdan is still kind of letting out that horrible laugh, and he says, you don't know what you're dealing with. You don't know what's down here, but I think you'll soon find out.
At that point, I will on the jaw to knock him out, and then look around, eyes stealing, waiting for the walking dead.
Well, I think maybe while you do that, I'm going to actually be sniffing and trying to pick up this trail and work out sort of what might be going on here. If this is, you mentioned the stench of death and the grave, I wonder if this is a point where I can investigate a mystery.
We might come back to that. I think the mystery might be about to come to you.
Right.
So we'll give that just a second, I think. And so back upstairs, the doctor he stands before the grand entrance double doors, and he says, "Behold, gentlemen, the fruits of my labor." And he reaches and he wrenches open this door. And at first you can't see anything. In fact, you hear this thing before it emerges from whichever dungeon or crypt it was being kept in. There are huge, heavy footfalls echoing through the room and reverberations that herald its arrival. There's a sort of deep bass grunting sound and a faint, arrhythmic crackling of electricity. And then a hulking human-shaped figure emerges, ducking its head to enter through this doorway and bring its abominable form into the flickering candlelight. The thing's size is its most obvious quality, because it must be 9 feet tall. When you have a chance to focus on it, that's not its most horrifying aspect. It's clearly been stitched together from numerous corpses. And God knows how many bodies have been stitched or grafted together to make up its form. And it's pulling its way through the door with a kind of horrible vitality. But meanwhile, downstairs in the catacombs, our other compatriots are not free from the horrors. You can't suddenly... Constance, the smell intensifies, and Florence, you can just feel the kind of wrongness and the subject of your enmity approaching. And there's a kind of rough-hewn staircase that leads down into here that you've just noticed because the light is not so good. But suddenly in a mass, a kind of horde of reanimated corpses are kind of tumbling down the stairs, clawing their way over each other. Kind of raw exposed organs slapping on the wet floor, and horrible groans and moans and hands reaching out towards you. So there's a horde of these things making their way down the door towards you. Anybody in any scene can jump in. Who's going to react first?
I was going to say, are they just so we get the scene correctly? There's the way we've just come from, and there's this staircase up. Are there any other exits from this place?
There are, yeah. So this place is kind of some kind of, at one point, natural cavern that's obviously been hewn into the castle and may well be used for all kinds of designs. So this isn't the kind of game where we map every single thing, but unless I specify, anywhere in a big castle or cavern like this, there'll be multiple kind of exits and ways to get out. What it'll lead to, you don't know. But yeah, you can see a passageway twisting away down the corridor. It's not the way you just came. And another staircase up as well. So a few potential exits.
So I'm sort of grabbing onto Florence's sort of trouser legs and gesturing to leave down one of the passageways, probably the one that smells the least of death, and then maybe trying to, if we make her escape, trying to sort of run around, do that sort of guard dog thing to try and keep Florence from them at least.
So these are my prey. These are my chosen prey. So Florence resists the tugging and draws that signature knife and meets the dead head on with a high-pitched scream with all the grief and anger.
I think it's best practice to, unless we can't avoid it, stop someone from rolling twice in a row. So although we will definitely come to that, Shane, we're gonna double check what Constance is up to. So seeing that this is happening, are you going to support your companion in their effort to fight these things, or are you going to look for a way out? Are you going to abandon them to their fate? Optionally, in this game, you can try and manipulate other PCs and give them little bonuses if they do what you want. That could be an unconventional third option, but it's entirely up to you.
I think it's seeing what is happening and that Florence is taking no way. I'm going to just, try and support her by maybe picking off a few of the, trying to run them, trying to flank them and run them away and try and funnel them around just by sort of, running around and around them in the sort of help out move kind of way.
Yeah, absolutely.
From there. Cool.
Cool. So make a help out roll.
Roll that. Let's see. Yeah, so it's +1, but I expose myself to trouble or danger, which is probably fair enough.
Absolutely. Okay, Florence, you're up. You can kick some ass to take these things head on.
Yep. Okay. So I am going to do exactly that.
Very nice.
With an advanced success.
So that means
I don't have the advanced move, I don't think. So
no, it just means that you count it counts the roll of a 10+. Indeed. So you get to choose an extra thing from the kick some ass move. Worth mentioning, although hopefully somewhat telegraphed by the fiction, there are a lot of them, and this was a potentially quite dangerous action. So there's potentially a decent amount of harm coming your way.
Yeah, but I'm going to give in to the hatred here, and I'm going to inflict terrible harm because I want to take as many, if not all of them, down if I can. So Yeah, inflict terrible harm.
Nice one. All right. Do you want to describe to us what this looks like?
So I think almost the camera focuses on Constance. And I don't know if you remember the second Guardians of the Galaxy where the camera focused on Groot with a fight in the background. And it's kind of like that, where we see Constance nipping around, taking hamstrings and dragging things down. And every so often, Florence just moves across with the knife, with the crowbar she's picked up, with everything, until at the end there is just a panting, bleeding Florence. How badly depends on how much harm you give me. Just sort of stood there, surrounded by these corpses. If they were fresher, if they were faster, they'd have done for her.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to say a decent gang that bit. I mean, they're still not. It wasn't an absolute horde. I think there's still only 2 harm from that coming your way.
Okay.
But Constance was also exposed. So Constance, you also mark 1 harm, as you don't get out the fight completely scot-free. But you take down enough of them, and there is enough truly dead guts and viscera all over these kind of stairs that they'd come down, that you have bought yourselves a bit of time. So you can still hear and, God forbid, smell that there are more of these things in this castle. But for now, you've bought yourselves a bit of breathing room and you can go where you like.
Yeah,
Cutting back upstairs. Sorry, go ahead.
I spend a point of luck to avoid that harm, please.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, as that happens, Constance goes back into human form and sort of pushes Florence to the wall and says, just be careful. I saw what you're doing. I've been there. The next time it'll be men. Give in to the beast too often. You become the beast. Trust me, I should know.
I think we'll cut back. So Frederic has presented this abomination that he's clearly massively proud of to the 2 of you. This stitched together thing with electricity flickering around it. And this thing doesn't seem to be any dumb beast. There's sort of a look of understanding, of comprehension in its eyes. It's not simply dancing to its master's tune. But for now, it's not saying very much, and Frederic is the one speaking. And he says, "Gentlemen, surely you wish to contribute your learning to more fine creations such as this. The possibilities are limitless, the ways we could bind these things together and harness the magic I've discovered. You will join me, won't you?"
Are you quite mad? And there's the reverse camera shot, so you see the professor's face, and as the beast is stepping forward, the light's kind of cutting across and becoming darker and darker. So there's just his one eye staring up at it, quivering. I have seen such as this before. The Count Dracula stitched brides together from dead flesh. And although there's the semblance of living, it's just a demon. The psychology within is warped and twisted. It is immoral. It is a monstrosity. You do not know yet what you have done. And I'll hold my hand out for an Oscar. And then...
yeah. You can have your XP.
Then I'm going to rely on my preparedness, so I will dive into my huge leather satchel that I brought with me and hope that I brought with me my fibrillator. We all know that defibrillators are used to restart the hearts, but how do you stop them? Well, with my reverse engineered fibrillator, that's what we do.
Very nice. But
did I bring it with me? So we'll find out in 1 second. I did bring it with me. So I have a rare or unusual item that's very useful in this scene right now. So I'll pull out these 2 paddles and start rubbing them together.
The doctor looks perplexed and unhappy. He says, "This equipment is not necessary here." He turns to look at you, Manfred, and he says, "Manfred, surely you will join me and we will combine forces. You know of the power of these magics."
Quite so. Ignore the professor and his fascination with tools here. I am absolutely astonished by what you've managed to achieve here. I tried this myself with not such great success as you've clearly achieved with, as the professor has suggested, Count Dracula. He was a bad specimen to work with, and I think actually part of the reason was it was just working with the wrong kind of ingredients. It looks to me that you have the most fine and probably a very healthy and upwardly a sound creature. Should we call them creatures? They're once gone, and they're. It looks like, and he's interrogating the figure of this body with these stitches. It's many creatures that you've put together. Tell me, I found that trying to attempt to bring back to some normality of life, Dracula was just fraught with danger and inevitably doomed. What have you done to minimize the risk of weakness in this creature? What is it vulnerable to?
He says, well, the key, you see, is not trying to simply recreate life, but to create something better, something different. But yeah, if you wish to, it's an interesting time to do it, but certainly if you wish to investigate a mystery here, you can roll the investigate a mystery move to see if the doctor is going to let something slip that will be of use.
I was thinking manipulate someone.
Manipulate someone, yeah.
Mystery,
Yeah, you can do manipulate someone instead if you wish to do it that way.
Nice.
Oh yes, that's a full success. They reveal. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get them to tell me what hasn't worked, what has worked, what we might know about this creature that will help us in putting it down later, because almost certainly that will be its demise.
Yes, he says, yes, well, it's a combination, you see, of the most advanced sciences, electricity, and power, but combined with practices that many consider outdated magics. The von Heinrich's Witch Hunter Manual contained many accounts of the foul magics that are used by witches, and I found that there were some clues there that have been the sort of secret formula. However, there is no such time for that now. While you appear willing to join me, your friend here obviously is misguided, and I think that there is nothing more we can do. And he points to the creature and he says, get that man. And he turns to you, Manfred, and he says, I'm sure you will also be happy to get rid of your short-sighted colleague. And we'll cut back to that in just a second, but we'll cut back in with our two companions down in the catacombs. The two of you have bought yourselves a little bit of time now, and now that these corpses are out the way, and Bogdan has been seen to, you've got a little bit of breathing room to infiltrate the castle properly, which was your initial goal. And so you've got a little bit of time to explore the castle and look for things. So I've written a custom move for exploring Castle Gravenhurst that is kind of effectively there to make this easier for us. On roll 20, if you find the basic moves handout, it's written at the bottom. But basically, you roll cool, and on a 10 plus, you'll get what you're after. And on a 7 to 9, either you'll get a lesser version of it, or there's trouble when you get there. So this is the two of you. You have the option to do that. If you want to stick together, one of you will roll, with the other providing +1 forward. If you've got multiple objectives you wish to pursue, then each of you can roll. So it's up to you how much you want to split up or how much you want to stick together.
Well, the fight has kind of gone out of Florence for a moment, having sort of screamed it all out. So it's very much sort of looking to Constance at this point.
Also, let's not forget why we came here. Let's see if we can find poor Charles. And yeah, I'm searching. I think that actually I might, if I may use my shapeshifter move and just in wolf form try and get a sniff of somebody alive who might match Charles's scent. I mean, it's not like I've got a good purchase on him, but not smelling like a corpse is the start. Somebody alive who's not us.
No, tracking seems absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can still roll the look for someone move, which is look for someone or something, which is based on cool, but take a +1 forward because your shapeshifter move is entirely appropriate.
Oh yeah. Do that. Oh. But no, I may have found something else I didn't want to find.
All right. We'll come back to that in just a second. Okay, so back in the hall, the professor is clearly, he's got his fibrillator, he's ready to go. Manfred, what are you doing? Are you willing to go along with the charade to the extent that you're willing to turn on your friend, or are you going to have to make a new plan?
How open does the doctor look to a change of mind? I've already been able to talk him into telling us a little bit about his creature and this kind of stuff. How open does he seem to, well,
He's a murderer. What would you
changes? If he's not, then I shall. Well, no, I cannot support this line of this line of attack. The professor has saved me when Count Dracula rose and he was upon me. He was upon me. He got me, and Manfred freezes. He looks, just by moving his eyes, he looks up at this behemoth creature, this 9-foot tall giant. His eyeballs roll as far as they can to the side where the doctor is, and they roll down to where the professor is, and it's a muscular strain, but he's catatonic almost in what he can do as he tries to remember what this is. Finally, he gets the words out. Dracula had this effect on me, but you are not the Count, Doctor. No, I shall not support you. And he lunges towards the professor in an attempt to become a human shield, to protect him, the man who has saved him before.
Perfect. Well, this beast, this corpse, this magnum opus of the doctor's work has identified Professor Van Horn as the primary threat because he's got this kind of machine. So it's making its way towards the professor post haste, willing to get its massive kind of once dead hands around your throat. But you get to act, Professor. So I think the fibrillator is almost certainly going to keep this thing at bay should you roll well, and maybe even do a bit of damage to it. So I think it's probably, if you just want to get it and keep it at bay with this thing, it's probably act under pressure. But if you have a more specific plan, Gaz, then you should go ahead.
Well, I was going to spend one of my hold from that I got earlier because I've got a plan. So really, I'm looking like I'm scared and all the rest of it. What I'm doing is luring it in, because what it's not realized is that above its head, there's a huge cast iron candelabra, the chain for which that lowers and downs it is right by my side. So as I am cowering, it's coming towards me. I'm going to zap the chains of the candelabra, which will arc lightning down upon its head, and maybe either discombobulate it, or maybe like disambulate it, or disarm it, literally. Maybe bits of it, the stitching will give and things will fall apart. So I'm trying to dissuade it from maintaining its cohesion, as the professor would put it.
Absolutely, yeah. Roll to act under pressure, and we'll see how this goes.
Let's have a look. Mixed success.
Excellent. Okay, I think that means that you're going to get it, but it gets closer than you would like, so it's going to get its hands on you. However, Manfred is already jumping in to protect you, so perhaps the harm will not befall you. So before we narrate the action, Manfred, roll to protect someone, which is based on tough.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
Well done, Manfred.
Very nice. So not only do you protect the professor, you can pick something from the 10+ list, choose an extra bonus. Have you got it in front of you, or do you want me to provide it?
Yes, I hold the enemy back, I think. There is this standoff. I'm not sure that I went to entire. I'm still excited by what the doctor has done with this abomination. I'm slightly envious. And so I don't want to necessarily pull it apart yet. So I'll hold it back.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that gives the Doctor enough confidence that we're not here to rain on his parade, but we're here to help him with the matter of his son. It's a very exciting experiment he's got, but there's no need to turn this creature onto allies, to friends, to academic colleagues of some significant and distinguished stature.
Yeah, so the creature's lunging hand is still going to be deflected by you and not hit the professor. So you are,
Yes.
but it does mean that Manfred, you mark 2 harm as the thing kind of basically in an attempt to grab, kind of half-heartedly grabs you by the lapel, and then almost with a flick of its wrist pushes you sprawling into some chairs and tables. So you take 2 harm from that, but you hold it back, which gives the professor ample opportunity to exact his plan exactly as he wished. So Gaz, you're welcome to describe it basically as if you rolled a hit, because the bad consequences were taken by Manfred.
Yes, I mean, I don't know how effective a hit would be, is the bit that I'm missing for narration purposes.
So you'll do some actual damage to it, so kind of permanent damage, which you can kind of describe if you wish, and it's very much going to be on the back foot, so you'll put a decent amount of distance between you and it.
Yeah, so in that case, as I've described, the electricity arcs from my fibrillator up the cast iron chain through the multifaceted candelabra above, which causes the candles to blast in a shower of red wax in little droplets around, almost as if blood was showering the scene. And as the arcs of lightning flies through this creature, it starts to judder and shake, and it's like it's constantly undergoing some kind of fibrillation. So as it tries to take a step, as it lifts one leg up, it kind of like shifts a few steps sideways before the foot comes down again, and it's kind of staggering about. So it can't. It knows where it wants to go. It just can't necessarily get there. It turns into some kind of monstrous Browning motion of staggering around like it's in a pinball machine.
Very nice. All right. I think we'll cut back to the catacombs. Although the two of our other 2 explorers have managed to explore the castle a bit more and have found their ways around. I don't know if Guy, you just want to give a brief description of you kind of taking the lead, exploring the castle, what you find, what we see, and then I'll tell you what the results of that missed roll will be.
So I think how this happens is we see our shadows like looming tall, illuminated by candlelight, sort of padding around these dark corners of the castle, occasionally sort of stopping and hunching as we see footsteps walk across us. There's a scene as we're like padding through the kitchen where we just catch sight of Constance like grabbing a bone from the offcuts of the bin, and then becoming a bit distracted by it and having to go back in, being shooed in by Florence, until we get a layout of the sort of lower stories of the castle. But I suspect we don't find anything, and maybe something finds us. You want to take over and make your move, Alex?
Indeed. Well, I'm going to say that you do find what you were kind of looking for, but it's not a good situation. So we'll see how you react. So you do pick up on the scent that you're pretty sure must be Charles. You got some of his belongings before you found his journal. So you've kind of picked up on his scent, and the 2 of you have made your way through the castle. And you find yourself, you have to go quite up far, and you realize you must be pretty high up in the castle by now. You make your way up a lot of staircases, and you emerge into this vast, almost cylindrical kind of chamber that must go kind of, God knows how many feet down through the castle. So if you imagine you've come out of this kind of balcony and you're looking down in this chamber that looks like it maybe was once used for religious purposes. There are kind of religious icons on the walls. There's a grubby stained glass window in here, but it's been repurposed under some kind of foul designs. There are vast rusted cages hanging on chains from the ceiling at kind of various heights. But on a cage kind of hanging not very far off the ground, so if you imagine probably sort of 80, 90 feet down, so a vast drop, Charles is locked in there, the man you've come to see, but you're very far away from him. And worse yet, Reinhold the butler has just entered the room, and he's dragging a kind of rusty axe behind him, and it looks like Charles is perhaps not long for this world, and you're removed from him by a sort of vast distance. So we'll give you perhaps a couple of seconds to think about that. We'll quickly cut back to our great hall. And so Manfred and the professor, you bought yourselves a bit of time, a bit of breathing room, but the kind of power this creature has, and its vast enormity, you've kept it at bay for now, but you know that, as is always the case with these monsters, you're going to have to find out what its kind of weakness is, and you're probably going to have to do a bit more investigation before you can dispatch it for good. But on the other hand, initiative is kind of on your side. So what do you want to do here? This thing is still gathering itself for another attack. Do you want to try and learn anything else? Do you want to try and do anything else? You're interested in Frederic at all? I'm afraid that you don't think you're going to be able to convince him from his dark designs. He's too far gone. But the initiative is on your side. So what do you wish to do?
Well, I'm going to suggest, actually, as your host, one of your hosts of Unconventional GMs, is what we do is take a break. This isn't just to buy us time so that we can work out cunning plans. No. But merely for the comfort of our players. Are you okay with that, Alex? We'll just take...
Yeah, I was trying to find a good spot and probably should have just called it.
Yeah,
So
I can see this accelerating from here. So I just to give everybody a chance. Don't worry, everybody in listener land. We're just going to take a quick break. We'll edit it down, so we'll be right back in a few seconds. But for us, it gives us a chance to get a cup of tea and get the heart rate down. So we'll see you in a few minutes. And welcome back to Unconventional GMs. We've got an exciting, thrilling story of two halves. Maybe it's going to end up as 3/4 and other things, and maybe back as a whole. Who knows? Let's play to find out. So when we left us, two of the party, the young ladies, were downstairs fighting zombies and searching for poor Charles, who was looking in dire peril when they eventually found him. Meanwhile, upstairs in the castle proper, the professor and the magician had faced a Frankenstein-like beast and the mad doctor who'd animated him. And while discombobulating it slightly, the pressure was still on, as would they need to know more about it. So let's jump back in, and to that end, to answer our keeper's question, the professor, seeing that Manfred's still a man in two minds, is defending him, but that might lead to his downfall if the professor stays where he is. So Professor Horn is going to take the opportunity while he can to sneak off to the doctor's laboratory. And I'm going to do that by spending my other hold that I got from my plans earlier to be where I need to be with the right things at the right time. So the camera's panned away. When it pans back to where he was and where the monster was about to hit him, he's not there anymore. And there's just like these little steps pattering up the staircase towards the laboratory. So I'm heading off there, and I'm going to leave Manfred to deal with the doctor and his abomination.
All right, Manfred, what do you do?
Manfred is immediately turning back to the doctor and saying, "Stop him! No, doctor, no! This is not what you need to do with these phenomenal academic solutions that you have found. Show me how you've done this, and let us see what we can do to make this a better world. But why have you turned him against my good man, my savior, the professor?" He wants to understand a little bit more about what the doctor's real motivation here is.
Absolutely. Do you want to roll to manipulate someone?
I'm always happy to roll to manipulate.
Less happy with the results, perhaps, but always happy to roll.
I had to roll up the chat log to see that. I thought it was a 10, but that was the last one. So this is a mixed success.
Yes.
He understands a little bit more about the motivation that is driving the doctor, but maybe not all of it.
So you get the impression that the doctor does want to reveal more, and he's kind of would like to talk about his ultimate plan and what drives him, but he still isn't sure if he can trust you, because the professor has been, you referred to him as your sort of savior, and you're obviously his companion. If Manfred can sort of throw the professor under the bus, so think of why he might want to betray him, or reveal his sort of dark feelings for the professor, or some kind of weakness that he has, then that might cause the doctor to open up.
I shall. He led me to a dark place. The professor led me to a dark place, and we went all the way through countries and and almost across continents, we follow the trail of this Dracula. And honestly, for a man like me, and I'm not a strong man. I'm just an academic. I'm just an academic. I just want to learn things about the world. I don't want to experience the world. My goodness, no. The professor has taken me to places that are beyond my constitution. He's put me in harm. Now, as you speak, I wonder whether he has put me in harm simply to rescue me, to manipulate me, to control me. Yes, I see. I see. You and he are very much of the same persuasion. I am weak, and the professor has had me in his hold. It is time for a new one to direct my life. Show me what it is that I must do to give you confidence in my interest in your endeavors here. What is it that you want me to do?
I'll let you mark an experience for a monologue about a vengeance or destruction you may wreak upon a foe, although in this case it may well indeed be the professor. And the doctors.
He's behind a curtain at the top of the stairs going, you what?
Everyone's a foe in Manfred's eyes. He just doesn't know it. He just doesn't know it. But now the professor is revealed to be the foe.
The doctor says, yes, he will simply discard you for his own zealous evangelical quest. He's blinded himself to the possibility of the world, and he just sees lesser men as tools to be used. But I see your greatness, Manfred, and I believe that you have much to contribute. And he says, this thing, and he indicates the creature, which is now standing somewhat docile. Given that Manfred appears to have sort of switched allegiances roughly sort of 3 times since he entered the room, the beast is a little unsure about what it should do, but the doctor appears to be holding it back. And he says, this thing is...
There is an embrace that Manfred gives to, almost a thankful embrace on the doctor. And as he pulls himself away, he attempts to draw the doctor's signet ring from his hand as a token that may be of some minor use later on, perhaps. Who knows?
Indeed. You can act under pressure.
I can act under pressure. I can act under pressure, he said.
Visualize it and it will happen.
Yes, exactly. I cannot act under pressure. And he's holding onto his hand a little bit too hard. It's like, doctor, you have shown me the true way. And he's yanking at his fingers, and it's like, it's awkward. Really awkward.
Worth mentioning, you could spend a luck here to turn that into a 12 if you'd really like to pull this off, but it's entirely up to you.
Yes, I would like to spend a luck.
Literally pull it off.
Exactly that.
Thankfully, the doctor is very receptive of your aggressively friendly handshake, and he kind of tilts his hand upwards, and the ring that you've been tugging at slips out off and into your hand. And he says, well, we shall, you can help me with my final preparations. For you see, this creature I've created is a powerful proof of concept, but there's more to come. You see, its brain matter is of the most advanced kind, and down in my lab, I have the means to create a hive mind of like-minded things. My failed experiments will be failed no more. They will all be controlled by a singular intelligence that I control. And using that, we can enact a greater world where all act in harmony under our will. And Manfred, let us go down to the laboratory where we will perhaps put this final plan into motion.
Sounds like paradise. Lead the way, Doctor.
And he does.
As he slips his ring onto his own finger.
With this big hulking thing, kind of dwarfing both of you as you make your way through the castle to the lab where your companion is ahead of you. Before we look at the lab, however, we have to check in with Florence and with Constance. So To recap, you're way high up in this big kind of cylindrical chamber that now desecrated, but perhaps used to be a place of worship. And Charles is down there, kind of on the floor, hung from this cage with Reinhold, ever faithful Reinhold, perhaps about to put an end to him. What do you do?
I turn to Florence as I sort of glance up and we see the full moon high in the sky, and say, hold tight and don't look down. And I'm going to attempt to, with a terrifying howl, use magic. If that's okay with you, Alex. I realise this is the most the most loosey-goosey, open to abuse magic system ever designed in Monster of the Week. I'm going to attempt to use magic to like leap down this huge thing. Like wolf magic works like this. So with a howl, so I transport myself from the up top down there, with Florence, sort of clutching to my fur, hopefully.
Absolutely.
What could possibly go wrong?
You're using magic in a situation that's already against you, so there will certainly be hard moves made if you roll badly or awkwardly. But
I can't imagine what could possibly go wrong from this situation at all. Yeah, I don't need to choose a glitch yet, do I? Until I
no roll. I mean, if you
until I
know
roll badly, yeah.
there's not so much I could do. So perhaps.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Right.
Very nice.
Works without issue. Yeah.
Yeah. So I trust Constance, who has not led me awry yet and has had my back, and grab on tight.
And certainly the shot of this will not be. We won't actually see the wolf leap falling. It'll just be various juddery shots of from below and above that we don't actually see the action there. Just the land.
Absolutely. So no hard moves made, although it does still mean that you very much denounce your presence. I suppose there's probably no way to get down here without that happening. And so Reinhold kind of starts back and he kind of tries to swing the axe backwards, but it's clearly not much good for fighting a kind of willing foe, because it's so heavy. So he drops it with a clang onto the ground, and he's kind of making his way with haste towards the back of the room. You can hear and smell more of these corpses that you've encountered pressing in, and you can see now you're down here that there's many entrances and exits to this place, which is perhaps not great when something's looking to trap you. So there's things making their way in. Reinhold is retreating, perhaps with a dark plan of his own, and Charles is in this cage pretty close to you, because that was your goal, so that you're by the cage now. And he's immediately reacted, and he's kind of pulled himself up against the bars, and you just hear a disbelieving voice, and he says, Florence, it can't possibly be you.
I remembered where the journal was, and then I'm going to lean back, aim up my hunting rifle at the padlock, holding it shut, and squeeze off a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly no roll needed for this, and the rusty cage door swings open, and Charles stumbles out into your arms. Perhaps he's clearly very, very weak.
Yeah, and I sort of look towards where the dead are coming from, and sort of hover between hatred and just say, I choose life, and start to move him out of there, away from the dead.
He says, oh, thank God, I thought that was it for me.
Constance, we need to go.
I sort of shrug and like growl in a way that might suggest, yes, I told you that before. Now you listen to me.
Is the plan here to just sort of beat a fighting retreat, or
I think we're trying to get out with him safe.
I'm going to keep him ahead of me and use my rifle initially, and when that's out of ammunition, cast it aside and go to the fighting knife and just keep moving backwards.
I'm going to suggest, unless the two of you would wish to kind of do this differently, that probably it's appropriate for Constance, I think, just to roll act under pressure, because it's not so much about a straight up fight to get out of here. And then I think Florence, you'll need to roll to, I think I'll force you to make a protect someone roll for Charles, because there's lots of potential for him to fall into harm given how injured he is.
That sounds good to me.
So should do
that. Nailed both. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you should still describe this. So you're going to end up in a kind of safe place with no corpses coming for now. I would suggest that Constance, you can kind of describe your retreat and then describe where you end up. And then Florence, mostly you keep Charles out of harm's way, which is its own reward. But if you want to narrate a snippet of a conversation or what we see, then you're welcome to do that. So Guy, you're up.
Yeah, I think that I'm sniffing the air to try and get a safe route out of here. But even with that, there's some like diving below the legs of these shambling corpses and nipping at their heels to try and draw them away. And so they're slower moving. Charles can get there. And we manage to, like, I think we scrabble up a flight of wooden stairs near sort of there's the rushing of water from somewhere, maybe from what caused the flooding in the place we originally came in. But we're able to stagger through a sort of heavy door that was just ajar, and sort of slam it and secure it from behind. I think we find ourselves in a sort of wine cellar, maybe. Dust everywhere, sort of ominous creaking, but with some stout timbers we can bar the door behind us there, and so a temporary respite and hopefully a way up into the kitchens or somewhere else.
No, I had nothing to that. Guy nailed it.
Perfect. Okay, so the two of you have got a bit of temporary respite and now need to kind of decide what the plan is now. So you know that your companions were still making their way into the castle. You probably don't have much of an idea, unless you've got some pre-prepared means you want to establish, that of where they've ended up or what they're doing. So now that Charles is safe, what is your kind of or relatively safe? What is the plan for the two of you?
Find the others and get out and
we should
finish
search the
this.
castle to find the others,
And
because
burn
who
this
knows
to-
what trouble they've got into.
and then burn this to the ground. Take the evidence, take the techniques and foul sorcery and science that raise the dead, so we can focus on living our lives.
I might talk to I might say to Charles, actually, what happened here? What's going on? That just occurs to me as I shift back to human form. Maybe we should ask this guy that's speaking out. So, what on earth happened here?
He is terrified of you. Obviously, he saw that you were transformed into a wolf.
Yeah.
I think for the interests of time, we won't play that up completely, but there's certainly a scene where Florence has to perhaps vouch for you, or you have to kind of prove that you have his best interests at heart. And then Charles, so you get a better chance to look at Charles, who generally has been beaten up and roughed up kind of all round and clearly possibly been starved, so not in a good way. But most disconcerting when you get a chance to look him over, he's got this big like thick bandage on his forehead, which is stained with blood. And when you inspect it, it looks like something sort of truly abominable has been done to him. When you look at it properly, his skull, a section of his skull has been removed, and you can see his kind of exposed brain, and it looks like some kind of awful experimental brain surgery has been done to him. For a section of his brain is missing. What the kind of long-term effects of this are not clear, although he seems sort of relatively lucid given all he's been through. And he says, "Oh, it's terrible. I always had my doubts about my father, Florence, you knew, but I just thought that he had eccentricities, strange designs, and I did think he was brilliant, and perhaps he still is, but his experiments took a dark turn. And then one day he came to me ranting, raving, talking about how his brain matter and my brain matter were the keys to what he'd been searching for. And then the next thing I knew, I was knocked out and locked in that cage with this done. But he hasn't been to see me since then. I'm dreadfully worried about him and what might be going on."
I think he is what is going on, dear Charles.
But
you cannot see what he's done to you, and I would urge you not to look in a mirror. Not yet.
My father still raised me. He's a good man. Please, whatever's going on, I'm sure we have to put a stop to it, but don't harm him. Surely we can take him alive back to Weisselberg and make him see the error of his ways and redeem him.
I truly hope that is the case.
We can make no promises of him making it back to Heidel, but when he has been doing such evil that we have smelt in this place. If you had fought the living dead, you might think differently.
He said, I've seen those horrible things, and certainly believe that they should be put back into the ground. He's just my father, you understand. And he's kind of collapsed back into these wine racks. Looks like he's considering, you know, taking a drink from one of these things, although what he perhaps needs more is food. Unless there's more you want from Charles or more you want to ask him, we might cut away.
No, I'll leave my rifle with him to protect him.
Oh, very nice. Okay. We're going to check back in with the professor now, I think. So, Professor, you had a bit of breathing room and you've been looking around. As established, you use your preparedness, so you can pretty much navigate around the castle until things change without anything, you know, going wrong. You've got your bearings about you. The key question for you is, obviously, originally you were going to go to the lab. You can still do that, and we'll cut to you at the lab on your own. Instead, if you wish, you could instead choose to prioritize looking for your companions, and you can go and meet back up with Constance and Florence. But it probably means that the doctor will get to the lab before you. Or if you want to be the first on the scene, you can be in the lab on your own. What would you choose?
I'm in the lab for sure. Along the way, I will have sketched with my red chalk a cockerel on various things with his beak pointing in the direction I've gone, because my friends will know how to follow these signs for me. But yeah, I can probably hear down the corridors like the sort of stuff that Manfred's saying. And like occasionally looking over my shoulder, a bit confused at some of the things. And it's like, does he mean that, or is this a ruse? I don't know. Anyway, but amongst all the rest of it, he's like just ransacking the lab, basically grabbing papers, looking through things, looking at the chalkboard that's got all kinds of symbols on it, stuff like that, examining equipment. So I was trying to work out like how to reverse the madness that this doctor's created somehow, because he was sure his fibrillator would have destroyed the creature, but it didn't. So there must be some extra he needs to find out. So he's going to look for clues amongst all the science.
Absolutely. I think this is investigate a mystery. In fact, I suspect that's what you were going for. But just to be clear, that is what you should roll.
That's what I'm doing. Yeah. I shall do that. I'll find out where the pop-up's gun there is. Ooh, do you know what? I think although I'm just getting more and more flustered and I can't find what I want and I'm starting to panic, I luckily spent a place to look, just stumble across the answer, because I slammed the chalkboard at one point out of frustration. It flips round to the side. That's got everything I need on the back of it.
Absolutely perfect. Okay, yep. So you get 2 investigate a mystery questions.
So, what can hurt it is definitely going to be one of the questions.
Absolutely, yep.
And what was it going to do? So there's probably some motivation that the parts of the whole have that we can use to leverage against them, perhaps.
Absolutely. So in terms of what can hurt it, part of the reason perhaps that the professor was struggling at first is because you were, you know, right the first time, you perhaps just dismissed it. So the fibrillator was very much along the right track for what might put this creature back into the ground. So revitalizing it, re-imbuing it with life actually will be the key to finally destroying its abominable form. The only issue is that the fibrillator, being nice and portable and more multi-purpose, didn't quite have the juice. But if you could juice it up, if you could build a bigger or a better version or improve it somehow, that would be the way to kind of dispel the foul magics that appear to be powering the creature, at which point it's just as destructible as anything else that's made of human flesh.
Gotcha.
And what was it going to do was the next question.
Mm-hmm.
So you get the looking back and combining what you saw of the creature with the analyses that you read on the doctor's whiteboard, blackboard, apologies. This creature very much does have a mind of its own, and you're pretty sure that although he doesn't realize it, the doctor has created something he can't put down, and that this thing is going to take over and will effectively be the sort of real intelligence behind what's going on. So at some point it's going to usurp him entirely. So the doctor is still dangerous because he's still got all his evil designs and wishes to create some kind of hive mind. Really, he's little more than a henchman to this creature now. And probably does not need to be your main priority. Does that feel like a reasonable answer to your question?
I'm delighted with those answers.
I'll give you a little bit more, actually, just in the interest so we know what we're dealing with going into the final scene. There are some more observations on what the creature can do. So far, it's only been a physical threat to you, which it still is. It's got its big steel cap boots. It's got its massive hands and claws. But the Doctor also observes that it's learned the kind of electricity that reanimates it can be harnessed and utilized. So it may well be able to sort of throw electricity around or shock somebody or affect the machinery that is in this vast place. So that is also something to be aware of. We should probably also set the scene for the laboratory, because you did make it there first. So it's vast. If you imagine this huge cavernous room, much of it is natural rock walls that have clearly been carved out. There's this big central kind of tower of machinery in the center of the room with levers and pulleys and God knows what. There's a huge slab, obviously where the creature was reanimated, and all kinds of controls on it. There's various gantries that make their way kind of into this big towering column at various levels. So there's, it's very much kind of multifaceted. So there's lots of different kind of ways to get around. Some of these gantries don't look entirely safe. And then, of course, down way below the cavern, there's a rushing river. So there's a sheer drop. So you have to either stay on a gantry or stay kind of close to the machine, or, you could fall to your doom. So plenty of opportunities for injury. There are also, possibly not worth stating, a bunch of reanimated corpses already here, shambling around, not doing very much. The professor is sharp enough that they haven't been a threat while you've been here. You've been able to kind of avoid them.
Yeah, he'll just make himself a makeshift copper belt for now. He'll get some copper wire to make sure he's grounded at all times, having learned that electricity may be deployed against him. So when the others see him, he's got this weird copper tail that's kind of dragging behind him in the dirt for no apparent reason.
Absolutely. Good. Well, Manfred and the professor and the doctor, sorry, Gravehurst, with the beast behind her, are making their way into the chamber at this point. You've kind of arrived, and Professor Dr. Frederic is saying, so Manfred, here is where it all happens, and he indicates this vast, impressive room, and he says, and this is the place that we will finally link all my creations together into one complete whole.
Manfred follows him in. He's kind of, his eyes are kind of, well, his body is following him in. His eyes are already leading the way in some ways. He's looking around. He's seeing all the things that are there. This place is massive, and he thinks that, oh my God, if I had all of this when I was trying to bring Dracula back to life, it would have been so much easier. And he's saddened that he just didn't have that opportunity to be able to have a massive place and the resources to achieve his lifetime goal. And then he's like, oh, hang on a second, all of your creatures?
Says,
Doctor,
yeah.
what do you mean by all of your creatures? Because surely this is the opus magnus of your endeavors. I understand that probably you've had a few things along the way, but mostly in most scientific endeavors, these things fall by the wayside. You have things that have left over. What other things are there?
Says, yes, I have many other, and he indicates, and there are some of these corpses here shambling around, and he says, I considered these failed experiments originally, these corpses, they possess no intelligence of their own, little vigor, good only perhaps for protecting my castle. However, the brain experiments I've done suggest that I may be able to use the necrotic electricity harnessed in my beasts to bind them all together. And they will all be under the control of the magnum opus. And I have plenty of corpses, and he indicates at the kind of base of this machine, there's kind of just coffins kind of racked up full of bodies, currently, fully dead. And he says, I will bring them all up in a great ritual, and then nothing will be able to stand against us.
So they will be under the control of, and he looks behind him, this thing, and not under you?
He says, well, the direct control of my creature, of course, but the creature answers only to me. I am its master. I am its god.
Well, and there is a moment where Manfred's kind of absolute humility is betrayed. His flaw, his weakness about... Yes, he wants to have ambitions. He wants to be the the big I am. He absolutely isn't. And he knows why he isn't, because these things are not the sort of thing that a mere mortal can do. To hear the doctor speak in these terms, his voice softens, and it's like, but doctor, you are messing with things which you have no control over. If you attempt to give control over these creatures to something that is out of your own control, there is no telling what destruction can be unleashed. Why would you want to do that? And this is not a course of action to take. Trust me, this is an excellent academic experiment, but and he sort of strains himself up. But I think, you know, you've got enough here to be the scholar of the year. There's no further work to be done. Dispense with these smaller creatures that you have, and put this greater creature that you have on show. Take him on a tour around not only this continent but others as well, and your reputation will be something that not only I would envy, and I envy reputation, but all of your peers and beyond. Stand them down. He's trying to get them to stand them down.
He says, I'm not interested in adoration or mere accolades anymore. The only destruction wrought will be those upon my enemies, blind, foolish men who don't see the possibilities, like the professor at Van Horn. God knows where he's slunk off to now. No doubt some cellar to cower in the face of the majesty of what I've created. There is plenty more good work to be done, and this is only the beginning. Manfred, help me with these machines. You've got quite close to this big kind of this bank of machinery now, and he's starting to make adjustments.
Manfred is protesting gently. He's like, well, I really do think that this isn't the right course of action that you should take. And but he says, well, you are a much more experienced man than I. You've obviously managed to reanimate these creatures, many of them, and pull them together. So yes, of course, if that is what you think is best. And he gets a little bit closer, feigns to support him with the pulling of levers and all the rest of it. And he says, well, he puts himself behind him, smothers the doctor, and says, well, I'll give you a hand with that, as the doctor is pulling on a thing, and he's got him in front of him. He's almost hugging him from behind, and he incants. He starts to incant, and his body heats up. There is something which is incandescent about the way that he approaches the doctor. Manfred's flesh starts to kindle, and with it, the doctor realizes that his own gown, his own lab coat, is beginning to start to inflame. At least that's what he tries.
All right.
Transmutation of flesh to flame.
Yeah, give it a roll.
Oh, this is all in Manfred's head.
Well, if you roll,
It is.
Transmutation of Flesh to Flame is one of Manfred's kind of rote spells. So it's a particular spell with a particular effect that you can always do. And there is a particular effect on a 6 or below. You can explain it if you wish, Jag, for all of us? What does it say if you miss on Transmutation of Flesh to Flame?
Yeah, on a 6 or less, I have no control over where this fire is going. And actually, rather than taking over the other thing, it essentially engulfs my own body. I am a flame. I'm hugging the doctor. I am on fire. I'm harmed by this, and anything that I try to do is just going to create more pain, anguish, and hurt for Manfred. But he is a glorious sight. It's a glorious sight.
It's certainly a bad news for the doctor as well. So in that sense, you do achieve your aim. I mean, you do get to, you tricked him well enough to get your arms around him, and you're on fire, and so is he. So, blazes, man, what are you doing? And the fire, you know, his sort of lab coat that he'd put on, dry and dusty as it was, is taken immediately. So the flame, you know, you've hugged him, and this flame is engulfing the two of you. The creature kind of immediately reacts when it sees that its master is now, well, its master no longer, and probably not long for this world. And it says, foolish men, neither of you understand the magic that you attempt to harness, but I do. I will put the ritual into its conclusion, and I will see it through. The world is about to learn about my endeavors, and it begins to kind of adjust the machinery, but also it just does something. It lets out a kind of strange cry. The electricity crackles, and the corpses begin to move suddenly in harmony, no longer shambling, to adjust the machine. And it looks like this thing is going to put its final plan into action. It will probably see to you, Manfred, at some point, but for now it doesn't see you as a threat. It doesn't know the professor is there, and no one else is in the room. Professor Van Horn will look at you first. Oh, sorry, Guy, do you want to go?
I just could say, no one's in the room yet.
Yes, yeah.
That was, yeah.
I will bring both of you in pretty soon, because I assume that that's your plan. There's nothing really else for you, nowhere else for you to be. But for now, the professor does get first chance to act.
Yeah, so the professor was behind the reversible chalkboard, smiling to himself, like at first scared and like trying to work out where the footsteps were with his tweed trousers like visible beneath the level of the chalkboard. But then he hears Manfred give one of his like monologues and smells the flames and hears the screams and think, oh, God, Manfred's doing his job. But at least I don't have to look at it. And then when he hears the intonation of the monster, there's like, oh, no, that's right. The monster's the real target. So he's somewhat perturbed when he comes from behind the droids to fight. There's this duet, a tango of flaming bodies. But he can't worry about that now. So what he's going to try and do surreptitiously while the beast is concerned with its task is introduce flaws to the machinery. So he's going to try and like create a feedback loop and create something that's going to mimic the effect of his fibrillator, but on a grand scale, as this monster unwittingly grabs metal levers and presses brass buttons.
I'm going to suggest that this is a roll, obviously. I think this probably is actually use magic and not act under pressure, because you're utilizing weird science. Unless that really screws you and goes against what you were looking to do, but.
I mean, excuse me, less than that charm roll I had to make earlier, so I'm happy to try. Yeah, it's fine. Fiction first. I've described what I want to do. You said it's magic, so it's moral magic.
I think there's more options for backlash and weird stuff that I think means it's kind of utilizing magic.
It's fine. Let's just do it. To do it. I will just quickly check if we've got a bonus though before.
Yeah.
I spent my hold already. I've done my preparedness thing, so I think we just roll. I mean, I do have a mystical library. I've not specifically said I've studied this stuff in advance. Are you happy to take +1 on the magic thing because I've prepared?
Yeah, you've had a bit of time and time to prepare. So yes. I think, and you were looking around this lab for a while anyway. So it feels like any justification to give you a +1 is one I'm happy to get on board with.
Yeah, so it wasn't really my library, but I've looked in his, which is nearly as good, perhaps.
Good enough. Yeah.
Oh, apparently not. It's a shame I don't speak German or whatever the country is that we're in right now. A non-specific European country. No, that's a fail.
All right. So So use magic can go pretty wrong when it goes badly, but also in the spirit of putting the fiction first, you're going to get what you kind of want, but with deadly consequences. So you are able to kind of harness the energy against the beast. So I think, were you trying to, just to double check, were you kind of happy to see whatever worked? Were you trying to build a machine, or were you just trying to get the machines that are already there to kind of react against the creature?
That's right. Yeah, I'm trying to turn his machines into a trap. So
Yeah.
you know, let him carry on doing his thing, but then at some point the fatal flow will be triggered, and hopefully it's destroyed.
Absolutely. I think probably part of this is you don't get the opportunity to trigger the fatal flaw when you want. It's going to happen now. So you pull some lever that's meant to get everything nice and set up so that when you connect the wires, everything is just going to go. But the electricity, with all its kind of foul magic, jumps between the wires of its own accord and starts everything off immediately. So green lightning starts to crackle around the whole room, arcing, hitting gantries, and two beams of this crackling green electricity hit the beast, and it lets out this horrible kind of scream and moan that suggests that this kind of energy is being kind of pulled out of it. So in that sense, it's not, it is now destructible in some sense, but the lightning is flashing and flickering everywhere, and I think it's going to hit you too. So you're going to mark 2 harm from a deadly shock. And as the green lightning hits you, it illuminates you and makes you clear for all to see. So you are now well known. The beast shouts, "Professor, you will not stop my plans today." And it looks like it doesn't have to do that much more itself. It looks like the corpses are taking over, and it is making its way towards you with a deadly vengeance as it considers Manfred beneath notice. Florence and Constance, I think this is a perfect time for you to make your entrance, which you should describe.
Okay, yeah. So so I think we're probably sharing a moment of like, well, what a success. I thought it was going to be dangerous, this mission, but we managed to tackle all those living dead perfectly safe. I just worry what trouble those hot-headed men will have got into. Who knows how they'll cope. Why do we always slurp like this? They just can't look after themselves, can they? And then there's this like kind of bang and crackle and creak. The lab must be here. Then there's this illuminated green electricity splashes out of it, and we sort of rush in to try and get the seed and see what's happening, and take in the whole chaos around here.
Yeah,
indeed. So looking at it, there's a kind of a few things going on, and it's the onus is going to be on each of you to decide what you want to do. Obviously, there may be something else you care about, something else you've noticed, but the obvious things are the beast itself probably needs to be destroyed at some point, and it looks like the professor has figured something out. So you could, go for that as your first port of call. The professor himself is probably under threat, so you could attempt to kind of protect him or put yourselves between him and it. Whether or not you prioritize that versus destroying the beast is important, I think. There's this ritual or whatever is happening that you might want to stop. Beasts are, other corpses are pulling levers, making adjustments, putting this thing into motion. And optionally, whether you care, Manfred is on fire and does not look to be in a good way. So I'll go to each of you. Let's go to Florence first, I think.
Okay. I'm sort of for a moment of indecision because I see something which represents everything that I hate, but also I see the people that have, the person who taught me how to hunt and how to fight, and without whom I would be dead. So I am going to grab a tarpaulin that's nearby and just run up and attempt to smother the flames on Manfred with the tarpaulin.
Perfect. I think this is going to be a protect someone. I think that's almost certainly the best thing.
That sounds about right.
Manfred, you should mark another harm, by the way, before this happens, for continuing to be on fire.
Nice. And I think I will choose the additional suffer little harm, having suffered some already.
Perfect. Yeah, that just means you won't suffer any harm for this. It wasn't massively high risk anyway. Optionally, because he was hugging him and the two of them were together, how do you feel about the Doctor? You can save him too if you wish.
Conflicted, because he has messed with the things that have, that killed Ernst, my dear Ernst. But I did tell Charles I would try. So yeah, I'll smother them both.
Yeah, Manfred, you're first aware of Florence when she...
Not them.
Yeah. Manfred, you're first aware of Florence being on the scene when she extinguishes these flames, is kind of standing over you.
No, he must be stopped. He must be stopped. I do not need to be saved here. The rest of humanity needs to be saved if he lets, if he manages to keep this creature alive, then nobody is safe. My life is not worth.
I'll lean down over Manfred and lock eyes with him and say, "You told me you can't save people when you're dead. Live those words," and then I'll stand back up and reach my hand out to pull him up if he takes it.
I was wrong. It was a scientific hypothesis, but now we can prove the other side of it. Let me go. Let me go. If he comes with me, everything will be fine. Concentrate on the beast, the creature, destroy it. The professor is in harm. He can save us. The Doctor is... He is wasted. Protect yourself. I loved you always. Even in death, I will. But do not let him resurrect this creature. And he flings this tarpaulin off him in the vain hope that he'll be able to either immolate again or just sustain ongoing damage to the Doctor.
If that happens, I'll step back and respect Manfred's wishes.
All right. We might have to see how that plays out. But first of all, Constance, what do you wish to do?
So I imagine the professor has some hypothesis of how to deal with the beast. But Constance has her own hypothesis, which is that it's made up of lots of bits of different things. And if those bits are all like ripped apart and off it, it'll probably like fall apart quite literally. So with a howl and a flash of fur, it sort of leaps. I'm imagining this might be on a sort of, the beast is maybe on the gantry, like pulling levers and turning around, so it all swings as it leads us.
Yeah,
trying to kick some ass over this torrent, like 60 feet below, as I try and kick some ass with my wolf form.
Just to double check consequences, this does probably mean the professor will take some harm because no one made protecting him their number one priority. But I assume that you're happy with that, in which case you can roll to kick some ass. Oof.
And I will spend a point of luck.
Absolutely. Okay.
Make that a 12. What happens with my luck? I have a luck special that means my monster side goes stronger. So I think this is the point.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
This is the point where the like sort of 30% of the movie's entire budget gets spent as Constance sort of half shifts into a like 8 foot tall wolf man or wolf woman form that was very expensive and hasn't, it's a special effect that hasn't aged very well to modern audiences. Yeah. It looks a little bit sort of like they've just taken the wolf's head and stuck it on someone to do it. This wolf man begins just wrestling with the thing. So I am actually going to, as we're fighting the beast, I'm probably going to inflict terrible harm.
Yep.
Which actually means that's 5 harm that I do.
Wow.
With claws of the beast and my teeth as I start ripping bits of it off and spitting them down into the river.
Very nice. This won't quite dispatch it because it is a big, powerful creature, but it's a very, very good chunk its vitality is, yeah, I think it's just, it loses an arm, for example, so it's just, you know, not got that anymore, so it's operating with a kind of bloody stump. There's huge chunks taken out of it, but it does fight back ferociously. It's got kind of horrible, long, kind of sharp, ragged nails that it is able to rip at you with. It bites you at one point, kind of smashes you into one of the gantries. So it does do pretty significant harm back. In a straight up fight, it will inflict 4 harm when you get this close to it. Electricity shoots out of it in an arc and hits the professor. So Professor, you also mark 2 harm. The primary focus has been taken away from you, but you are still in some danger. But that does bring us back to you. You've kind of set everybody up, and thankfully that at least Constance is taking pretty good advantage of it. But you've still got a little bit of breathing room now. There are still some corpses shambling towards you, but they're a little way away. So what's your plan?
Yeah, so I've been howling like a wolf as this electricity's been arcing into me, which is probably what guided my companions to me. So I'm going to, try and help destroy this creature. I still have my fibrillator plan.
Yeah.
So I've de-electrified it, and my wolf companions started to loosen up the stitching and stuff and pull bits apart, and it's on a metal gantry. So I'm going to rush over with 2 of those like big brass crocodile clips and 2 wires trailing behind me, attach them to the gantry, and try and fibrillate it and get the oscillations of the frequency so that it will only affect dead flesh and not the living flesh of my wolf.
Very nice. Yep.
I use that classic sign. So I guess roll plus sharp, is that? Or is it a particular move?
This is a good question. I think it's
weird.
Yeah, it might be, because it's not actually kick some ass, I don't think, because it's not a straight up fight. It's a kind of interesting use of science with potentially unintended consequences. It kind of feels like it could either be act under pressure, which is cool, or use magic, which is weird. I think it's probably just act under pressure, though. Apologies if that's a bit dull, but I think you're just rolling cool.
That's fine. I think I've done the weird bit, haven't I? Now it's a matter of
having
the wherewithal to kind of
put it to bed.
Done.
But yeah, it's not you and the beast inflicting blows on each other.
Mixed success.
Okay. I think the hard bargain here is somewhat obvious. Constance is fighting this thing, so you're potentially going to put her under threat if you shock this gantry. You're really not confident in this dead flesh plan, good as it was, so someone is going to be exposed. You could instead wait for a more perfect moment, perhaps when Constance is up in the air or entirely clinging onto the beast, but you have to step yourself onto the gantry to do that. So the question is, who is going to take a bit of unintended harm, you or your companion?
I will look her lupine eyes in the eyes. I'll look at you and like, do you put your head on one side and a kind of like, don't do that affair. So it's just like leap at him, like uncaring.
There's the sort of pitter patter of my blood raining down the gantry.
I start to worry
limping to one side.
Yeah. I do start to worry that there's an amount of dead flesh within Constance, so that I might. So yeah, I'm going to climb up on the gantry and get a better purchase and zap it with potentially hitting myself. But I've got a lot of confidence with the copper wire wrapped around me. That'll ground me surely. So I can't see that going wrong.
You did establish the copper wire, which in the made-up nonsense science of this game is a good precaution. So you mark 1 harm from this, as the shocks do kind of, it's nasty, kind of goes up your leg, but yeah, it does still work, and that will also inflict a pretty good amount of harm on the beast. It's almost out of action, but not quite, as it roars in pain, and you can see the flesh kind of sloughing and shaking off its body as it's kind of physically falling apart. But it's got a little bit of life force left in it, and who knows what havoc it can wreak in that time. I think it may be up to Florence, fittingly, to make the final move. But first of all, sorry.
I just wanted to point out, just in case it's not clear, because I haven't been narrating it much, but the professor's looking quite ill as well. That last electric shock, he's got electric burns up the side of his face. He's starting to limp about, and he's coughing a lot.
Good to know. Before we check in with Florence, Manfred, are you dedicated to the plan of taking yourself and the doctor out of this world? You're muted, Jack.
Yes, Manfred is absolutely 100% dedicated to that endeavor. There is nothing that will surpass his ambitions at this point. It's clear that the Doctor is pursuing something heinous, and he is still indebted to the Professor and the company that the Professor has convened. So yes, he is absolutely
All right.
deciding that.
Actually, it feels wrong not to roll dice, but if you're happy to die, it's challenging to potentially come up with consequences of awkward rolls.
Yeah, you fail, you live.
You don't get to die.
Yeah, exactly. It just feels a little bit mean. Okay.
I'm fine with that. I'm absolutely fine with that. It's I'm happy with no chance of failure.
Yeah, it just feels like you've set this up. Okay. I think you should describe this in as much detail as you wish. The Doctor, you already set him on fire. He's not in a good way. You have the upper hand. Describe how you and him exit this world, paying particular care to your final words.
Well, he's headed over to his contraption and he's asking me to help him do some crazy things, mechanical things. Honestly, I'm an academic. I read books. I don't push buttons and levers and things like that. I don't really understand what that's all about. But there is something delicious about the Doctor, and under that guise, but also as a learned scholar and researcher of ways in which to manipulate the world, I consume him. I envelop him with my arms, and the flames go up. He's not sure what he can do. He is pressed against the mechanical contraption, the rigging that is this device that he has built to reanimate people. The most glorious of ambitions. And Manfred has had this. But it's clearly, if this 9-foot being that he has constructed is the kind of thing that needs to be done or made to realize these things, it's a terrible endeavor. And as he sees his best friends, the Professor, Florence and Constance as well, albeit they are fine, they're ladies, but they are fine ladies. The Professor is the one who saved his life, let's not forget. As he sees them down below, he is most assured that the best course of action is to protect them by not letting the Doctor go any further. There is this towering hulk of a creature behind us that is laying waste upon all of the lab. If the Doctor is immobilized, the only thought that Manfred has is, if the Doctor cannot move, we can all get out of this. Well, they can all get out of this without any repercussions. And he closes his eyes, and as he does, he feels the heat around his body and his eyebrows flicker with a terrible burn that starts to envelop his face and his head, and then the Doctor in front of him, and then he doesn't know what happens. The silence envelops him, and all he hopes for is the laboratory is destroyed, the creature that is thrashing around doesn't for much longer. And he closes his eyes and his ideas and his thoughts and comes to I am happy to surrender my ambition to bring back life if this is what I can save those who are living rather than those who are dead. Florence, for you. And then he goes.
Very nice. Well, yes, Manfred and the Doctor both know more. Florence, you catch these last words as you're perhaps looking, considering your next option. You can see that the beast is almost slain, but your two companions have taken a lot of hits, a lot of harm, and so it probably falls to you to finish this. What do you do?
So I take it the creature is still trying to lash out at the professor.
Yeah, and Constance, really. It's just trying to perhaps just take as much with it as it can at this stage.
Cool. So having learned through hard experience just a little earlier, Florence has decided that she spent far too long focusing on destroying what is dead rather than saving what is living. So I'm going to invoke my new move I learned through experience earlier in the session.
Ooh.
And Florence just sprints at it, screaming, "Never again." And I'm going to choose to protect somebody without rolling, as if I rolled a 10+, but I cannot choose the option suffer little harm. I will instead choose the option inflict harm on the enemy. And I am basically throw myself between it and the professor and Constance and just hack at it with a fury of not somebody with nothing to live for, but somebody who suddenly has everything to live for.
Very nice. And you deny the creature its goal of taking as much with it as it could, as it kind of dies a sad, almost quiet death as you just hack it to pieces. And it gives its last groans and moans. And you look up, see your two companions who are, taking some punishment but are still standing. And given this, and given the fact that you put the creature out of action, the three of you are able to make an escape from this place without further risk. It's rapidly being destroyed. The flame is engulfing it at a rapid rate. That pillar of kind of machinery is now a pillar of flame. Bits and pieces falling off into the abyss. The gantry is collapsing, and it looks like the whole castle is going to fall in on itself, as if this laboratory was its dark heart. And so I think we'll cut as you flee, make your escape. I don't think we need to detail that in too much. Instead, we're going to just have an epilogue, I think, for each character. As you make your way out of this castle, the deed is done, but Manfred is gone. Manfred has already had his epilogue, so I'll go around each of you, and you will give your last, it could be a scene immediately outside the castle, cut to later, whatever you want to be the last we see of your character. I would perhaps suggest that you might want to incorporate what you think of Manfred or how you honor his memory. And Florence, you may wish to incorporate Charles if you wish, because there is you can get him out too. But again, I'll leave that up to my players. I think that's it from me. So Gaz, take it away with the first of our episodes.
Yes, it's another similar looking castle. It's an innumerable amount of years later. The professor still looks old and haggard from his excursions before, but he's still alive. And there is a vampiric figure, a classic Count Lugosi style, with the sun that's just sunk below, giving his monologue at the professor, who's reaching into his bag, and the vampire thinks he's safe, but it is his new ranged defibrillator he pulls out, which he uses to zap the vampire and start its heart, which just expels the blood from its body as he thrashes about in a Hammer Horror new Technicolor movie that we've got to by this stage. And yes, that's the splash for the movie trailer as the sort of credits start to come up of new in cinemas.
Guy?
Yeah, so we see a much more modest laboratory with piles of diaries and scrolls and records of learnings and a carefully assembled, quite dangerous looking library behind us. Like lots of the books have got like locks on them and stuff. And we just see Constance sat like trying to make some gestures with her hands, incanting some words, looks up at a little portrait picture of Manfred on the wall, and like narrows her eyes, says "for you," and then says it again, and we see her hand burst into flame as she learns the dark arts that Manfred has left for her.
And Shane, finish us off, I think.
So, a European city, unnamed, a nice romantic evening, two people strolling down the side of a canal in an isolated part of the city. It's Florence and Charles, arm in arm, smiling. They stop for a moment, stare at the water. Behind them, seemingly unseen, something shapeless, indistinct, rises. "Oh, Charles," Florence said, then lowers her voice. "Remember Manfred's lessons as they draw weapons, united not in love, but in loss, as they have taken up hunting together."
Perfect.
Wonderful. That's excellent stuff. I hope you in listener land enjoyed it as well. If you do, I encourage you heartily to please like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, ring that bell, share on social media, whatever you would like to do. And do check out the rest of the Unconventional GMs channel, because there's many different systems, many different styles, and lots of other good stuff there too. If there's something you'd like to see us run or play, please do put it in the comments down below. You know we'd love to hear from you, and it helps the channel out. So until next time, everyone, thanks very much. This has been Unconventional GMs.